and welcome to Smart City Kids Workshop Facilitating Early Literacy. My name is Erica Papier, and I'm the Director of Business Development at Smart City Kids. I'm also the parent of a rising 5th grade boy and 9th grade girl. I know, Becky's shaking her head.
How did that happen, Erica?
I don't know. For the parents that have the very little ones, don't blink, or you will have very big kids. We are so appreciative that you took time out of your busy day to join us for this workshop. I promise you will find the session to be tremendously informative, and you will leave with new tools for your parenting toolbox. I want to briefly introduce Smart City Kids so you know the extent of the services we provide for parents, students, corporations, and schools. For over 20 years, Smart City Kids educational consultants have guided parents and students through the admissions process for entrance into all grade levels, starting with the littles in nursery school and continuing all the way through college admissions, including boarding school and special education. We work with families throughout the New York area, as well as across the globe for families who are relocating. Smart City Kids also has clients who are schools and corporations, and we provide guidance about parenting, education, admissions, and relocation. Our advisors offer parenting sessions where we help parents navigate issues that they are struggling with. Perhaps this is something people attending today might take advantage of. We also have an extraordinary group of highly experienced tutors who support students of any age and ability with subject work, executive function, and test preparation. And last but not least, Smart City Kids offers over 50 workshops a year, and we hope you will continue to attend our sessions. I am extremely excited to introduce our two speakers. Kathryn Ressa, also known as Kat, is a speech-language pathologist, a parent-child educator, a pediatric feeding specialist, and founder of Ressa Speech. Her experiences in education range from running language-based playgroups in a school setting to working as a one-on-one clinician with children birth through adolescence, in addition to empowering and educating parents on all things child development. Our other speaker, Becky Simon, is currently the Director of Admissions and Education Coordinator at the Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church Day School, where she has been for the past 17 years. During her time there, she is not only the overseer of admissions and curriculum, but she has also taught all age groups from the babies and toddlers, the teenies, to the 4s and 5s. She holds a master's in early childhood education from Bank Street College of Education and has participated in many professional development workshops and seminars around the Reggio Emilia philosophy. Becky lives in New York City and is the mother to two tenacious and spirited little girls who are 6 and 9. So before I turn the floor over, I just wanted to share 2 promotions that we are offering to parents who attend our workshop today. So first, Smart City Kids is pleased to offer a 15% off one package of 4 tutoring sessions. And Kat is pleased to offer 15% off a package of 5 parent training sessions for speech and language concerns, or 15% off a package of 5 individual speech therapy sessions. So our contact information will be available at the end of the presentation, and so you can feel free to reach out for us for further information. Okay, so let's get started. Becky, Kat, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to go ahead and get started. So thank you so much.
All right. Kat is doing a wonderful job with the presentation. I'm just gonna give a little intro while she gets this set up. Thank you, Kat. Once again, I am Becky Simon. I'm the Director of Admissions and Education Coordinator at the Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church Day School. And I was really excited that Erica invited me to join this conversation because I think as parents, we have a lot on our minds. And there is a lot of information out there for us, but it's also a good reminder to take a deep breath and that we have really good information that we can either take or not take. But our goal today is to really empower you to understand this idea of early literacy and what it means for your child or children at home. Okay, so while we're figuring out the slideshow, I'm going to begin unpacking some academic terms that you might hear. And you might hear these in parenting blogs, you might hear them from park bench chatter, you might hear them in some parenting books. And I think it's really important to understand them in order to understand your role as parents within this facilitating of early literacy. So the first concept I really want to unpack is just literacy alone. And that simply means the child's ability or the human's ability to learn to read or write. And I think what differentiates literacy from early literacy is really how we support that natural development of skills, right? Through the enjoyment of books, right? Understanding the importance of positive interactions between babies, parents, and their love for books, and creating a literacy-rich home environment for children to learn and appreciate from the books that they have, right? So early literacy is not about the reading of writing, but it's about this mindset of developing an appreciation for and love of the written word. Actually, as I was walking my daughter to camp this morning, she is 9, I asked her, I said, what should I tell these parents? Why is learning to read and write an important thing? And my 9-year-old so beautifully said, she said, because books change your life, right? Because you get lost in books and you find ways to connect with characters. And I was like, all right, well, I have to say that today. So I think that's the important part of early literacy, right? It's that connection, that love, that joy of diving into a book, right? Reading that same book over and over again because you fall in love with the characters. And how are we as parents promoting that at home? The other concepts that I want to speak briefly about are print awareness, right? Print awareness are just the functions of print, right? The conventions of books, right? Reading from left to right, from right to left, forgive me. How do you orient the book, right? Understanding turning pages, recognizing the words versus the illustrations. Phonics and phonics awareness or phonemic awareness. This is one you're going to hear a lot right now, especially if you're into podcasts. This idea of phonics is it's a big conversation, right? It's an important one. It's how we make a connection, or it's the method of making a connection between the sound and the symbol, right? How are children not only recognizing these shapes that they're seeing in the books, right? But how are they recognizing that these symbols, when put together, create particular sounds and sequences of sounds? Part of phonics and phonemic awareness are understanding uppercase and lowercase letters, putting the lowercase and the uppercase together, but really having that comfort with sounds and symbols. This is a big one that I want to touch on briefly, and I want to put aside a little bit. I've had a lot of parents over the past couple months asking me, what's going on with balanced literacy versus phonics? Like, what do we need to know? And in the media right now, you're going to hear this kind of controversy over what is right. Right? There was a woman from Colombia who talked about balanced literacy and didn't pay much attention to phonics. And we placed a lot of emphasis on whole language learning. We placed a lot of emphasis on context learning, but we weren't placing, and I'm talking about the big we of American educators, right? We weren't placing as much emphasis on sound symbol correspondence, right? But what we know, what research tells us, and it has told us for a really long time, is that there needs to be a beautiful balance between whole language learning, right? Understanding illustrations, understanding context, and understanding sound symbol correspondence, and understanding letter awareness. And so when we talk about tools at home, I really want you to think about, how are we doing both of those, right? How are we introducing these very concrete ideas, symbols and sounds, while also creating a context-rich environment for children to work on? And then the last piece I want to talk about is mark making. Literacy is about reading and writing. And when I talk about mark making, or when educators talk about mark making, it is really the process of moving from unplanned, unintentional lines, also known as scribbles, to intentional lines. And how do those lines connect to form shapes And then how do you put those shapes into context to be symbols, whether letter symbols or pictorial symbols? And that process of mark making is often overlooked, right? And so how are we supporting children in reading, but also writing? So again, I just want to start by unpacking some of those key terms. And then later on, we'll talk about how we as parents can really think about those terms using our parent hat, not as our teacher hat.
Sorry about that. I muted myself. Okay, so I'm going to take it from here on talking about language and how it relates to literacy and how it all ties together. So a lot of people don't even realize how integral speech language pathologists are in literacy development. So let's start back at the very beginning. So your child is starting to learn language while they're in utero. They're starting to discriminate between sounds and words, and they're able to process that. So this is when literacy actually starts. Spoken language is the foundation for written language. So your child needs to be able to understand that words have meaning and put that meaning behind it, and that it is reciprocally related. So if your child doesn't have a strong semantic understanding of language or not a strong use, then it's going to be difficult for them to understand how to read and how to use books. So just to elaborate a little bit more on that. So this, although I said it starts in utero, really during the preschool years, children are learning what a word is, what a letter is, and they're seeing those, around, they're seeing them, written on the board and written on like things labeled. So if a child doesn't understand that words have different meanings, then they're not able to, they're not able to understand that. So we really want them to have a strong understanding and receptive language and be able to use language, right? And we not just saying that while reading a book, up, up, up means going up, but saying what's up and these different uses of it. So being able to understand and use it then in turn helps with literacy later on. So let's go into early or emergent literacy goals. So there are 4 building blocks of emergent literacy. So we think of oral language. So being able to understand and use language. So you like to think of what's in a child's vocabulary. Are they using like different grammatical forms, past tense verbs, future tense verbs? Then will they understand that in turn in a book, like will run or ran? And then we also think how Becky did such a great job elaborating on phonological awareness, right? And we hear this all the time, phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and what it really is and what it means. So not just letter sound correspondence, but rhyme, but being able to make a rhyme and alliteration. And there are books that do a great job in targeting these skills within the book. So we can think we are in a book, right? That's talking about some of these concepts. I'll get into a little bit more of that later. And then again, print awareness. So being able to understand that these letters have meaning, right? And that it's not a picture, it's not a visual representation, but you do have the two, that you do have the orthographic representation of it. And within that, also understanding the difference between letters and words and punctuation. So it's not just understanding that it's written, but what is a word? A word is made up of letters. What is a letter? A letter has a sound. All of those different terms and like scaffolding it. And a lot of it is so innate to us at this point in our lives, but really just like peeling it apart. And then alphabet knowledge. And it's really hard to talk about print awareness and alphabet knowledge because they are like very similar. So understanding that like the actual F written is a letter, but then also you think phonologically, it makes the sound. So they're all tied in together. So when I think of emergent literacy goals, I think, is this child ready to read? Right? And I look at these 4 subsections. What is the child's vocabulary like? You know, do they use and understand 500 plus words in the preschool years? Are they, you know, just labeling what they see, or are they able to, you know, retell the story? What do they understand rhyming? Can they pick out rhyming words? You know, can they partake in alliteration? You know, cat, take off the k, what do you have? These are all foundations for reading. And then print awareness, the differentiating between it, understanding words, letters, and then alphabet knowledge. So I do just want to highlight that there are books that incorporate all of these skills in them, and that's in a subsection of books called metafiction. And I'll just throw some out there. So Z is for moose, right? I love that. Like, you look at the title and it's like, what is that doing? That's drawing attention to, there, obviously the author made that for a reason, titled it that for a reason, teaching alphabet knowledge and phonological awareness. Is Z for moose? No, but you're drawing attention to that right there. And then I like to think, you know, you can throw they go through it in a goofy, silly way that really engages the kids. R is for moose. D is for moose. So really honing in on that one skill that's not just reading and comprehending, but understanding the phonological awareness and alphabet knowledge behind it. And then just to give another example of a book that does a great job at targeting these skills is We Are in a Book. Okay, so that gives you, helps you target these like book vocabulary. So the thing, what is a title? What does a title even mean? We're told that that's the title of a book, but what is that? You know, what is the meaning behind it, or an author or an illustrator? And these are all the building blocks before your child reads.
Now it's my turn to forget to take myself off mute. Thank you so much, Kat. As I was listening to Kat talk about those building blocks or those readiness moments, like when are they ready? And we get that a lot in education. When is my child going to read? Or when are they ready to read? And I think those are really good markers to help parents understand reading readiness and what that entails. So when Erica, Kat, and I were brainstorming this session, we all thought it was really important that parents really feel supported as parents, right? And not parents as teachers. And I think that's a really, there's a really big difference. And we all want parents to know that you are all doing really well, right? Showing up today is supporting your child in their early literacy journey. But there are things you can do to make that journey even more joyful for you and for your child. And I really do want to start with this idea of the joy of reading. So when Kat was talking about those, you know, readiness goals, part of it was pulling from books itself, right? But if you are like me and you have a child like me who would refuse to like come and sit in my lap and read at any point in time, I struggled with getting them to just open a book, right? How do I get my child to enjoy this moment with me, to enjoy flipping through the hundreds of books we have at home? Because without that joy, right, we can't build on that love for learning or that love for reading. And so when my now 6-year-old daughter was, oh gosh, 3, and that was in the midst of COVID, I really had to rethink my approach to reading, right, with her. And so I took a little bit of a step back and I thought, how can I create an environment for her that she feels comfortable in and that she has access to topics that are most interesting to her, right? And so really building in special places in their home or in your home where children have free reign of those books. And not only free reign of those books, but perhaps free reign of drawing in response to those books, because that joy, that connection they have to books and writing is really going to carry over when they start to engage in more complex thinking or complex learning to read and write. I also want to make it really clear that every child develops at their own pace when it comes to reading and writing. And what a lot of the research says is that there is a range in which is typically is typical of developing children, right? Some children learn when they're 3 or 4, right? And that's just when their brains are ready. And some children don't learn until they're 6.5 or 7. What's really important is to support them where they are and continue finding topics of interest to them so they continue to go deeper into their reading and into their love of character development. So some things we could do at home, like I said, making those beautiful nooks. Now that COVID is over, get a library card. I know this seems really simple, but I was so surprised about how few of my daughter's peers had their own library card. And it is such a simple way, right? It's this moment of going to get something important, right? It's recognizing that there is this incredible place or multiple places that house hundreds, if not thousands of books that they can choose from. And when we started making going to the library a weekly occurrence in my family, I started to see my children wanting to read more, right? We're placing importance on this subject by taking this and making it an event, right? They go pick out books, I go pick out books. And I might not like their topics that they choose. And I want to tell you as parents, that's okay. You're not going to love everything they read, but what you want is for them to love reading. So if you can, bite your tongue and let them pick up that really terrible graphic novel if that's what they want, as long as they're picking things that they feel connected to. Print awareness. This is something that's really easy at home. It's really good for early literacy, and it's also really good for organizational tools and allowing your children to be independent in their home environment. In my apartment in New York City, we have everything in their bedroom labeled, right? Their drawer for underwear, their drawer for pants, right? Where their bathing suits are. Now that they're older, I have them write their own labels, but when they were younger, I would write the labels for them. As often as I can, when we're walking down the street, I call out signs that I see, right? And when they were little, before they had any real ability to read or write yet, I would have them look at symbols, right? Because symbols are really a precursor to traditional letters, right? So stop signs, one-way signs, no, the crossing or don't cross signs. And really helping them recognize when symbols represent ideas. Letter awareness, phonemic awareness. Kat spoke a lot to this in books, right? When I'm reading or when I'm reading to children at school, I'm really asking questions about the sounds of words, right? Or I'm pausing and saying, "Oh, look at these letters together. I wonder what they might make," right? When I sound it out. And even if I'm working with a child who clearly can't read yet because they're just 2 years old, they're beginning to internalize some of these questions I'm asking out loud, and they're thinking about it, right? Even if they're not verbally expressing an answer, right? So have letters around, have puzzles of letters around, have letters in the bathtub. There's great letters that you can, that attach to the walls. Letters everywhere. What children respond to is a physical manipulation of toys, right? They respond well when they can pick up a letter, talk about it, and place it in action within their play, right? So you have a child who loves trains, right? Make sure they have trains with like the letters and the numbers of the trains, and if you're in New York City or wherever city you're in. Or perhaps as they're building their train tracks, you are helping them make signs for their train stations, right? Even if they're creative and imaginative, help them recognize that this tool of writing and reading is really about communicating ideas, right? So letter awareness and phonemic awareness is really fun, and can actually make playing with your child more enjoyable for you. Storytelling. So Kat talked about understanding language, understanding vocabulary, understanding context clues, or understanding tone within stories. So what I like to do with my own children and children I work with is storytelling, right? How are children telling their stories? How do they understand beginning, middle, and end, right? How are they placing their characters in context? And, when they're little, it's simple and then stories, right? Once upon a time, there were two children and they went to the zoo. And then you ask your child to say, and then, right? And you keep going around and around and around. And it's really building on this idea of a story, right? And as they get older, right, and as their ability to draw becomes more concrete, you might ask them to illustrate those stories, right? As you're doing those and then stories, write it down for them and say, ooh, I think we need pictures for our stories, and have them draw the pictures according to the story, right? So you're really making this connection again with reading to writing, right? How are they connected? And then the last piece is mark making. I know I defined it for you earlier, but I just want to redefine it for you now, because I think it's a phrase not all parents are aware of. But again, it's the ability to move from unplanned, unintentional lines, scribbles, to intentional lines. And this is really important. And I think, again, we overlook this as parents, but it's really important because it helps children recognize the strength of their own hand, right? It helps them understand how their body moves kinesthetically and how that movement leaves behind ideas on a page, and then how those ideas are interpreted by others. So when your child is drawing, right, and it looks just like crazy scribbles on a page, you can simply ask, can you tell me about your drawing? I don't guess what it is. Don't make assumptions. Let them tell you, right? And as soon as they tell you, you can say, oh yeah, I see that that's a sun and a beach, right? Oh, I see that yellow over there. So you can also help them recognize that they're communicating clearly and that you're seeing the ideas that they're placing on paper. So these ideas that I'm leaving with are really simple. They make playing with my own children so much more fun, because I tell you, there's only so much doll playing I can do. But if I add that we're making a store for our dolls, and we're making, pictures and labels and, I don't know, money signs for it, right? Like, it makes it more interesting. But it also lets children know that you recognize that what they're doing is important, right? It also allows your child to hear and see that you value their output, wherever it might be. The last piece I want to leave you with, although I'm sure my brain will keep churning, is they need to see you reading. This is a big one. I know as a working parent, I'm exhausted, right? Like, I want to put my kids to bed sometimes. I just want to shut down, right? Get through dinner, clean up the apartment, and then have my me time. But it is really important for your children to see you taking time out of your day to read, right? And I'm not talking about a Kindle or an iPad, although I'm really guilty of this and my children will yell at me all the time for it. I'm talking about an actual book. And the reason why this is important, because when you're reading a book, you're modeling for them this behavior, right? You're modeling for them that this is something that they can do. They can take out a book off the shelf and they can sit quietly, right? That you're turning the pages from left to right, that you're carving out time for this really important work. So again, as parents, we need to find joy in reading too. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be crazy difficult, but we need to find that joy in reading and writing so that we can share that joy with our children.
Thank you.
Becky,
so much,
yeah.
Becky.
Go ahead.
Can you give some more examples? You just threw out the example of when you're playing with your dolls, then you make a store and then you label things in the store. I'm sure you have lots, but can you share a couple of other examples of things at home that parents already might be doing that they can incorporate more literacy, or perhaps fine motor activities, things, that they can get down and dirty and messy with at home to support those things. That's all one was a great little example, and maybe other ones like that could get parents
Sure.
more ideas.
I'm glad you asked, because I think I forgot to mention some really easy ones. Grocery list, writing letters to grandma and grandpa. Now I'm gonna pause for a second, because I think as parents, we all have moved to a very digital age. Right, my grocery list is in my notes app, right? I text my own mother, and my children see me texting my own mother. But again, we have to find time to get out some paper and pencil and do it the old-fashioned way, right? Like, children are not going to learn how to write or read if we're not modeling it for them. So as difficult as that may be, you get out a piece of paper and you give your child a piece of paper and just say, "Ooh, what are we getting at the grocery store today?" And if they're not writing yet, they can dictate to you and draw pictures, or they can scribble next to you. Or right now I have on my refrigerator, I have a wish list for the grocery store. So when my children were able to then begin to sound out words or create pictures that were more representational, they put it on the wish list, right? So you're giving them some autonomy and agency in the home. Like I said, writing letters, that's a really big one, especially over the summer when we're all on vacation and we're traveling on the weekends and family is, all over the place doing some fun things. How are we staying connected? So again, having your child write letters to family members or friends or people in your building. Bringing back memories during COVID, when my children felt extremely isolated, they began to do pen pals with the neighbors on our floor in our building, in which they would write their letters and slip them under their doors and wait for the return letter. And so you can make those examples fun. But like I said with the baby doll example, any game that they're playing, right? And it could be anything. It could be trains, it could be baby dolls, it could be slime making, right? You can always add literacy to it, right? And you can add literacy to it by making silly rhyming, right? You can say slime goes by, or I use a dime to buy slime, and this is a terrible rhyme. Like, just make it playful, right? Allow them to see that these learning opportunities are fun and silly and not something that they should dread going into it. I hope that helps a little bit, Erica. If I think of more, I can type them in the chat later.
Yeah, no, that was great. I thought that those were some fun examples. Another one that comes to my mind is cooking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you want to speak a little bit to just daily household chores and cooking?
Sure. Sorry, because now I'm really excited about it. So cooking is a great one. Cooking is not only early literacy as you're reading a recipe, but it's also really good math. And mathematical thinking as you're thinking about numeracy, you're thinking about quantity, you're thinking about volume. A fun thing I like to do with children is have them develop their own recipes and just have them write down all the ingredients that they can sound out or think of, and we see what we have in the house or the apartment and make those crazy cookies together. Again, when you're going to the grocery store or if you're meal planning, sit down with your child and talk about those recipes. Read them together. If there's pictures, how can they connect the pictures that they're seeing in the recipe to write the words on the page? Household chores are great. Okay, kids, children of all ages, like birth to, I won't tell you how old I am, but I'll enjoy a list. We like lists. We like organization. We like roles and responsibilities, right? And so if you create a chore chart, as Erica mentioned, at home, one, you'll have a cleaner apartment, right? But two, you will see children become more independent in taking care of their environment. They'll become excited when they see what's on their chore agenda. And you don't have to call it chores. You could call it some, wonderful name like magical caretakers, right? Whatever it is you might be. But really, again, giving children the responsibility and the agency to take control over their home environment. Give them a chore chart. Make sure you have their schedule for the week so they know and can independently begin to recognize the same words over and over, right? If you have swim every Thursday, make sure you're reading swim and pointing out that word swim, and soon enough, they're going to be able to recognize that word on their own. So as much as you can, really tie in visual print the physical writing of words and pictures, and the playful nature of being a child and parent. And you'll see that children naturally gravitate towards reading and writing on their own.
Yeah, I think some things that we think of as a chore or a hassle, young children love to help and they love to feel that sense of responsibility. So things like taking, non-breakable things out of the dishwasher or helping with laundry. I mean, there's so many opportunities, as you said, Becky, for taking these everyday chores and making them into teachable moments.
And not to jump back in, but thinking back to what Kat said, we overlook like one of the most crucial ways, and that's just singing and conversation. Like, song is so powerful. The research around singing and the connection to language is so strong, right? It's, again, understanding rhyme, it's understanding imagery, it's understanding emotion, it's connecting to context and clues. It helps us, understanding sound symbol correspondence, right? And it's fun, and that's easy that we can do as parents. And then conversation. I think this might be the hardest thing for me as a parent, is finding the energy to like really sit down and be in conversation with my children, right? I'm in conversation all day with my colleagues. I'm in conversation all day with people I meet at the store. And then for some reason, when I get home, I just want to shut down. But take that moment to shut down, but then find that time to talk with your child, to ask them what they're thinking, to elaborate on what they're thinking and feeling. That conversation will not only help your child develop language, vocabulary, understanding perspective, respecting other people's moments in time, but it also helps them develop storytelling, right? If they're telling a story based on what happened at school that day and you ask for more details, it encourages them to go back. And I promise you that is a direct connection to their understanding of books when you're reading them. And the more you can talk with your children just about their day or about the books that they're reading, the more comfortable they will be in that process, right? So when they get to kindergarten, right, beyond where your children are now, when they get to kindergarten, they'll be comfortable raising their hand and making predictions because they have that ability to make intelligent guesses based on context or previous understanding.
You bring up such a great point about just storytelling in general, and how storytelling doesn't necessarily require a tangible book, right? So I find asking children about their days a lot of times, and it's exhausting. We're in the field where we are talking all day. I like to keep the questions pretty open-ended too, and just kind of seeing where the child takes the conversation, rather than pointing like, what did you do for special? Or what did you do? Who did you sit with at this? And seeing where the child goes and giving them the opportunity to elaborate. And then we, as you said, further probe. I think another great way to promote storytelling, and I do this all the time, I think with younger children too, I love to combine the use of visuals, so like an image as well as print, right? Because we think of communication, well, a visual representation as well as the written spelling, those are both different meanings. They both have meaning behind it. So I like to show pictures and ask them to elaborate, what's going on here? Can you tell me what you think is going to happen? Or when retelling an event or a day, using pictures as prompts. And then again, when you're reading a book, sometimes not even looking at the words, using just visual only and having them tell their own story, and just seeing how how they narrate it and how they tie it in cohesively. And if they don't, right, then you can kind of see where they're at, if they're using first, next, or if it's just, then this happened and that. And then it's great for descriptive language too. There's so many opportunities from using like storytelling, even just like out in the community. I mean, we're in New York City. I love to just ask a kid to tell a story about what they think is going on at the table next to you, or things like that. So I think, yes, we think of literacy always with books. And, I think you did a really beautiful job, Becky, highlighting that there's so many ways within our everyday environment that we can incorporate it that doesn't require additional materials or time. It's just reframing our mindset behind it. And again, I love the idea of, I know kids love logos and signs, and I think that's one of my favorite things to use out, and kind of, saying, oh, you're reading, you read that, oh, we can walk, you're reading, like kind of like really like getting them excited and giving them the opportunity to be successful. Or like, oh, you knew to get your backpack, oh, if they're following like their chart of things they need to do, just really setting them up to succeed, and meeting them where they're at developmentally. So whether that's using visuals and print awareness, just telling stories, or I love scribbling, as you said, and making a mess and being like, what does that mean?
You said something interesting, and it was so simple, but you said, look, you can read, right? You're doing this. And I think, again, Erica, Kat, and I are all in New York City, which has its own level of pressure, but all cities and all parents have levels of pressure, right, around early literacy. And I think it's always a good reminder that your child is always doing the best that they can, right? And is always growing and learning, even if the growth and learning doesn't mirror your expectations, or what a blog is telling you your child should be doing at this given time, and to, tune into who your child is, and what they're doing and how they're growing, and supporting them from that point, versus comparing them to others. And I think that's an important kind of affirmation to give your child too, is that, everybody's learning, and it's okay that you are not where your friend Erica is right now, right? Like, look what you can do and look what you will be doing. Because once children start comparing themselves, and once children start doubting themselves because others are further ahead than them, that's where reading becomes less joyful. So I really, when Kat said, like, look, you're reading, like, I think that is such a powerful phrase for any child at any level, like really validating who they are and what they're doing at any given time.
Becky, can you speak a little bit, parents have an experience at home with their child. They see certain things, they experience certain things. Then their little precious peanut goes off to school and is with a teacher and a group of other children. And sometimes children are different in school than they are at home. So can you just maybe speak to helping parents understand what to do if the teacher says something different than they're experiencing, and just how to navigate that if something like that were to come up?
Sure. So this happens a lot, especially in early preschool years. Children are or express themselves differently in different contexts, and for various reasons, right? Some children at home are incredibly outgoing and really social when they're around their parents, and then they get to school and they don't share any information, and they're not talking to their peers, right? Or the flip side, like my daughter, who when she's around me, she doesn't utter a word, and then she gets to like her social context and she's a social butterfly and she's super chatty and engaged, right? And so when there's a discrepancy between what a parent is seeing at home, right, and what is happening at school, whether socially, emotionally, intellectually, right, that is just time for conversation, right? And the reason why I say that is because we always need more information. It's never as black and white as my child's not doing this at school, I should be really worried, what's going on, why isn't this happening, right? So I always start with a conversation, and the conversation should always be around what the parents are noticing, and then what the teachers are noticing. And then adding a layer of what is the difference between those two contexts, right? At home, maybe they're the only child. Maybe they don't have to compete in dialogue with anybody else. Maybe they haven't been exposed to a group context yet, and they're just not sure yet how to find their voice, right? Or maybe at school, they are the child that, is politely waiting their turn, right, to talk, but then when they're called on, isn't quite comfortable yet to speak, again, because this is a new environment. So I always tell parents, we have to have a conversation, right? Who your child is at home and who your child is at school is still the same person, right? The contexts are different. So we have to find a way for each child to feel comfortable in multiple contexts. And the way we do that is by getting to know the child, who they are, what their likes, what their interests are, where they are cognitively. And once we, have that baseline, right? And I'm talking about a parent-teacher baseline that we all agree upon, then we can work from there on the academic and the interpersonal skills to make sure that who they are aligns at home and at school. I also like to tell parents, your child is going to play out different personalities for a really long time. Right? They're going to test out their peers' way of talking. They're going to test out their friends' actions, and that's okay, as long as we're talking about it with our children. Oh, I see that, you're trying out, the way that Kat talks to her friends. I wonder why you're doing that. But again, it always comes down to a conversation between the parent and the teacher, and thinking about the context or the difference between the context, and then how do we develop that baseline understanding of who that child is in order to move forward.
Yeah, I think you touched on so many important points there, especially the communication piece. And it is between the teachers and caregivers, and it's developmentally appropriate too, I think, for the child to have a different role at school, because, I think of school as their job, like it's their job to go to school every day versus at home, and to really just validate what they're going through and what they're feeling in that moment. If, like, I know it's frustrating, can you tell me XYZ? I know a lot of times with children, they often shut down to use language. If you kind of are like, why aren't you doing this at home? Your teacher told me you can do it at school. I saw a video of you, or I know you can do it. And I think children feel that pressure, like really, very clearly. And I think just giving them the space while also validating, what they're doing is hard, or, maybe you don't want to do it. But when you're ready, you can, because, New York City is it's a tough environment for children to grow up in, and just letting them come to you to a certain point.
So I just want to open it up now. This is perfect timing. We have just about 10 minutes left, so we're pretty much on schedule. So if anyone has any questions, I believe you should be able to put questions in the Q&A, and we could pose them to Becky or to Kat. Okay, so here's one question. And I guess maybe Kat, this is more for you. If my child has some kind of language delay, what are some recommendations for supporting these literacy skills?
That's a great question. So I think everything that's said here, discussed, is for children who, don't have any language or developmental delays and do, right? So if your child does have a language delay, you just want to make sure that you're meeting them where they're at developmentally with language. So using books, or the way you read the book doesn't have a ton of language for them to process if they're having difficulty processing language, or just highlighting, a few of the main like words or actions going on there. I also think tuning into what kind of learner they are, right? So a lot of reading is decoding, right? But if they're more of a visual learner, then have them draw their own picture, and then use books with just pictures, right? To really foster that love. And again, I keep saying it, but setting them up for success, because you don't want them to have a negative association with print or with books. So strategically, choosing what, maybe you're looking at menus, right? And you're looking at pictures on a menu, or You're looking at a magazine, there are so many different types of print and that promote literacy, and there's so much more visual too. So for children with language impairments, a lot of times they're much better with visual, like real images. So I always say, get like a highlights magazine, or I remember as a kid, the Scholastic, like the book fair, like, and we'd circle it, and like we'd have like the 3 different colors, like of like want, need, and then like would like all of things like that. Like that's promoting any kind of literacy, right? So even like when I mentioned a menu, like if you're out to eat, or if you're ordering, like, and you have a print, like a hard copy of it, give it to your child and just see if they're looking at it, if they're knowing left to right. There's so much about it that's not actually like decoding, but understanding even how to hold things and how to turn the pages and reading left to right, that you can do. And just tuning into what they like.
Okay, great, thank you. So there was a question, and I'm glad the person has found this very helpful, so that's wonderful. The question is, can you both recommend resources available to support children at home? So what can parents be using?
So the tools that I think Kat and I gave are really tools that we have in our everyday life, like pencil, paper, books, right? Like that's really, and our voices and when we're singing, even if they're terrible voices, right? Like these are really simple tools. I think for me, the biggest tools are continuing to find books that interest us as adults and interest children. So I actually follow I follow a bunch of literacy, social media people that I connected with kind of intellectually. Like the books that they recommend always feel good for me. And one of those organizations is called So Just Books, and the other one is Kid Lit Mama. And they're great on social media. They put up books about social emotional learning and give some ideas and suggestions. But I think keeping books fresh, right? Keeping the books that our children are reading, making sure that they align again with their interests. And then I said it before, and I'll say it again: wherever city you are in, get a library card if you have access to one, because I think that is the easiest way to promote literacy and learning.
I just have one thing to add, Becky, to what you just said, and this is going to sound really obvious, but have your children's books within their reach. Sometimes people have these very, very beautiful bookshelves in their children's room, but this teeny little toddler can't necessarily get to them. So there are all kinds of baskets and special boxes and ways just to create a little reading nook. And it sounds brutally obvious, but sometimes space doesn't dictate a lot of flexibility, but just and then rotate them. So you can have a little basket of books, and then when they seem to get tired of them, you can just rotate them, and then it's like they're new when you make the rotation. Kat, did you want to add anything about sources at home?
Yeah, with the books, keeping them, I agree with everything said. I love to use like seasonal or like themed books too, as a way to promote language too, right? Like I think of like wreath. How often do we use the word wreath or those kind of things? And I think that's the beauty of the change of seasons and like, going back to school, like we can that's a really tough transition. Getting books around it, right? I think that really helps familiarize your child with it. And also it's showing them that they're not the only ones, doing these different things while exposing them to more novel language.
I just want to add one thing on the subject of books. So you might have a child at home who likes to read the same book over and over and over and over again. And it might be driving you bonkers when they say, "Can you read We Are the Book one more time?" But that wanting to go back and read the same book over and over again is not only an affinity for the story itself, but it's your child recognizing that they're beginning to predict the words that are coming onto the page next, right? They're beginning to make connections between the words that you're reading and the symbols represented. So, switch up those books, make sure they're low on the shelf, but don't cut short this really important work of reading books over and over again for children. One, I will tell you, your child will feel loved if you will read that book just one more time, but it's also an intellectual importance as they're beginning to recognize and predict the story that they've familiarized themselves with.
And some of the board books that don't have a lot of words on the page, you can also use the illustrations to talk about emotions. How do you think, even if it's animals, how do you think that person is feeling? Oh, what about their face? Are their eyes big? Do they look surprised? You can even add words when you're reading the board books that don't have a lot of words. You can just make up additional stories that you see happening in the picture. You can ask your child, what else do you see happening in this picture? So there's so many opportunities. But Becky, I think everyone's been there with the one more time with the same book, but I think that's a really, really good point. So I think we are just about out of time. I really want to thank Becky and Kat so sincerely for the effort they put into making themselves available in the middle of the day. I know they're both very busy professionals, so a most sincere and heartfelt thank you to both of you for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge and wisdom with our guests today. And parents, we are here for you, all three of us. I don't know, Kat, maybe can you flip it over to that last slide that has our information. So please reach out to any of us if we can be of further support to you. You are not alone in your parenting journey. You have lots of wonderful resources and support to you. So thank you again so much to Kat. Thank you to Becky. Thank you to the parents who joined us today, and have a wonderful rest of the day and happy summer.